All right, Sammy, mentioned 2 days away. Everybody wants a Super Bowl bet. Every interview that we do, they're going to say, what's your Super Bowl pick? We're going to get texts on Sunday morning. Who should I bet for the Super Bowl before these games get going? Everybody's looking for a Super Bowl bet. And as I started to whittle these names down, these team names down, I was surprised how quickly I was able to do it. When we started doing this a few weeks back on the show, just talking about it, I've found that I could be wrong, but there were a lot of Super Bowl contenders in recent years that I quickly put a line through. They may be Super Bowl contenders, but I've taken the stance that I'm against a lot of these teams that have had very short championship numbers in the past. Did you find it easy to come up with Super Bowl angles to where, like, if you're doing matchups, if you're doing a bet on a team where the list is pretty damn short?
It's very easy. And here's the
Yeah.
trick. I learned this in Vegas 5 years ago, sitting in the back of one of the sports books. The director took the sheet and I said, man, I always have a hard time with the Super Bowl. And he said, here's what you do: take the sheet with the 32 teams and all the prices, and you start at the bottom and you just start drawing lines through teams. So you start at the bottom, Patriots. Then you whack, you know, team A, team B, team C. You get into that middle tier, and you can literally go through probably 15 straight teams, right?
Mm-hmm.
If you look at the 32 in totality and start at the bottom, you're halfway through. And it's really not difficult. It's whack, 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 whack. And then you get to the middle tier and you see teams like the Chargers at the big prices, but they're not winning the Super Bowl. So you cross them off. My first trip through the 32, I only had 5 teams left. So from there, then you come back down and you start to ponder. I did this exercise 6 weeks ago because I had to start writing stories about it for Fox. So that I've got the Eagles to win the NFC at 7-1 and the Chiefs to win the Super Bowl at 6-1. Here's a bet that I made at BetMGM out here in Mass. Eagles over Chiefs exacta 40-1. That's what I did.
Okay, at first blush, you had 5 teams going through that exercise. At first blush, I had 3.
Oh, 3?
I had 3. Yeah, 2 in the AFC, 1 in the NFC. But part of that is taking a stance. We're against San Francisco in a number of ways, whether it is on a weekly basis or just big picture stuff, and thinking, okay, maybe somebody else can actually take that division. Baltimore is the third favorite. I don't have Baltimore on my list. Do you have Baltimore on your list?
No, my list, I only have
Yeah.
2 in the NFC, Philly and Detroit. And then in the AFC, I've got Kansas City, Buffalo, Cincinnati.
In the NFC, I have 2 teams, Philly, and then I did end up putting Detroit. Initially, I did not, because if I'm going to do a couple different matchups here, I needed a second NFC team. So I go Philly and Detroit, and then I did Kansas City and Cincinnati. So there's that. Yeah, no, I mean, we know the story as far as the Chiefs. Let's start in the NFC. We know it just doesn't matter. I mean, there's going to be a lot of chatter about the receivers, and it's good for them that it probably seems like Steve Rice is going to be out there. Whatever kind of trouble he gets into, it's probably going to be pushed back a year. But all the backups on that depth chart right now were starters a year ago. And yes, they struggled in the regular season, but they still went on to win it all. So, like, this question about, is Hollywood Brown going to be ready? Who cares? It doesn't matter. Yeah, maybe Worthy looks good in the second half of the year and he's plugged in as a starter right now. Maybe he goes through his struggles. Who cares? It doesn't matter. Big on the Bengals. Everybody on the show seems to be, for a number of different reasons. That was one of the most difficult schedules any team has faced. The number of above 500 teams they went against last year, and they were without Burrow. They faced 14 teams that were above 500 last year. It was ridiculous. And now they get the easy schedule for this season. I have enough trust in the defensive coordinator, Lou Anarumo. They're going to turn things around, and they bring in 2 new safeties, one that's been there when they were successful. I think that pairing is going to end up working. High on the Eagles as well. I think all of us are, and it's a little scary. My pushback on Detroit and why I initially did not want to include them is that we know almost the entire schedule is going to be played indoors. And what are they going to look like in a January road playoff game? But maybe that's not the scenario. Maybe they have the best record in the NFC. Maybe they're playing indoors and they don't have to go to Philadelphia in January in their last chance, we believe, with Ben Johnson. So I don't think the Lions are going to struggle. And yeah, they're probably going to win that NFC North. So I included them as well. The Chiefs, it's a short number in that range of 5 or 6-1. And then these other teams that we're talking about, Philly, Detroit, Bengals, they're all in that range of 12 to 15-1. And then the other one you threw out there is Buffalo, right?
Buffalo's got some issues defensively. I just think they're going to be able to shore those up over the course of the season. And I really like Josh Allen. They get unfairly knocked for losing a bunch of close playoffs games to Kansas City. Buffalo chokes in the playoffs. It's
Right.
not like they did in the 90s. The 13 seconds loss was bad. That was that was awful. They should have won that football game. But how many times can you kill Buffalo for saying that they lost to the eventual AFC representative in the Super Bowl? I'm a little
Mm-hmm.
bit higher on Buffalo. I noticed that neither of us even mentioned the word Jets yet. How
Nope.
quickly did you cross that one off?
I hesitated because I like the Jets in the AFC East, and yeah, it was close. I was considering it. I understand your look of Buffalo. Anytime you have one of the best quarterbacks in the world, you have a chance. And the big concern is the defense, which maybe they can get worked out, but the heartbeat of that defense, Matt Milano, he starts the season with an injury. So I'm like, here we go again. It feels like they're going to take steps back. But yeah, no, Jets, I like them on the win total. I expect them to win the division. But as far as playoffs, they're probably going to have to go on the road because of the division that they play in and some of these young quarterbacks against Aaron Rodgers. Yeah, I do trust them more right now.
Aaron Rodgers only won one Super Bowl in Green Bay. So it's not like this
Yeah,
was a guy that
that's
perennially
why.
got you deep into the postseason. Tremendous quarterback, one of the most accurate we'll ever see. But in terms of winning you several games in a postseason, he hasn't really been that good at it. So now he's going to start at his age off the Achilles injury. It was a cross off. I actually crossed that one off on my second time down. I went up, left them on, and then crossed them off. And people are going to go back and listen to this show, or maybe they're reacting now like, wow, these guys only like 4 or 5 teams. Wow, whoa, really sharp show. Well, let me give you the ratings here. These are from Kenny White. These are his top 5 teams in terms of power rating. Number 1, San Francisco. Neither of us picked San Francisco. So
Nope.
we already killed the best team in the NFL. We whacked them already. 2,
Mm-hmm.
Kansas City. 3, Detroit. 4, Philadelphia. 5, Baltimore. So for one longtime odds makers ratings, we took number 1, we took number 5, and threw them in the garbage. And I don't think a lot of shows are willing to have those conversations.
We also wiped out a lot of teams, a lot of quarterbacks that have not had a lot of playoff success too. Like you throw Baltimore in there at 5. That's one of them. Shortish numbers that were easy cross offs. Dallas, they're still sitting there at 20-1. That's a cross off. Last week, I keep hearing people making the case for the Rams, and I don't understand it. We're on the other teams in that West. We like the Cardinals. We like the Seahawks. We're not saying win the West, or we're just saying exceed expectations. But I don't know if it's people hunting for an NFC team because it's tough after Philadelphia if you don't buy into San Francisco. I'm not sure exactly what it is, or we've seen it with Stafford. They surprised a year ago, but just with that defense, all that turnover without Aaron Donald, I'm not seeing it. I'm not seeing it with the Rams, so I find that interesting. And here's the one that people are going to throw out there that we have not even addressed yet. Just I can't go Texans yet. I can't. Now maybe they surprise. Maybe Stroud takes another step. They win a playoff game last year, and maybe they win multiple playoff games this year. But just the sample size of watching this sport my entire life, life is not going to be as easy for CJ Stroud unless he's the Hall of Fame guy that some people are already projecting him to be.
Kenny's got him 7th in the NFL. Kenny White,
Mm-hmm.
longtime Vegas odds maker. So again, San Francisco, Kansas City, Detroit, Philly, Baltimore, New York Jets, Houston Texans. But I texted Kenny yesterday and I said, Kenny, you're going to have to drop the Texans off the 7 line when they lose to the Colts this Sunday. And he said, I don't know. Because look, there's a difference between odds making and bookmaking and betting. Just because an odds maker believes that these numbers are true doesn't mean that they're actually going to, extrapolate over the course of a season. Perfect example, we talked about college football off the top. Florida
Mm-hmm.
State was the 8th best team or 9th best team in several odds maker ratings. Where is Florida State now? 20th, 30th,
Yep.
40th. So, power ratings can certainly be wrong out of the gate. And we've learned that about several teams so far in college football. It's not exactly the end all be all. Power ratings should be a North Star to get you to some bets, but then you have to adjust your ratings. And that's what makes Kenny so successful. His number might be off early, but he gets to the right number, which in turn allows the bookmakers to get to the right number. And then the bettors have a tougher decision. The perfect example in the NFL is what we discussed last week. Oh, the totals are all over the first 2 weeks. Well, then you raise the totals. The odds makers hike the totals up. The bookmakers raise the totals up. And the bettors bet the hot overs, which in turn go under. So the adjustments are always made. Your numbers might not be right early, but as long as your numbers get better over the first 2, 3, 4 weeks, you're going to be in a good spot.
Yeah, you've got to respond. You've got to react, and it's like striking that balance. What is it? How do you avoid overreacting? BetQL Daily, Joe O. Sammy P. All right, you mentioned your Super Bowl exacta play. We can repeat that for those that missed it in just a moment. But I was curious your thought on picking a matchup as opposed to picking the exact result. How do you get there? Because I found it interesting that I was looking up the different prices of finding a matchup and then the exact results. Like Kansas City, Philadelphia, that's 30 to 1 to be the matchup. But I'm not getting 60 or better with any one result, which I found surprising. Kansas City, Detroit, I saw Detroit over Kansas City 48 to 1, but Kansas City over Detroit 46 to 1. That didn't make a lot of sense to me. That it's almost the exact same number. So, do you prefer the exacta to the matchup, or do you suggest maybe you should bet more on the matchup than the exacta, or do you hit it both ways, or how'd you handle that?
What I did was basically just go down the line and take all the exact matchups and all the exacta boxes and just chart them out through about five,
Mm-hmm.
6, 7 books and just pick the best one. Because you're right, there are a couple books that have Kansas City over Detroit in that 25 to 30 to 1 range. And there's another one that has them on the higher side around 45 to 1. So it all
Yes.
depends on the price. And of course, that's all predicated on what people are betting at that specific shop. That's why you can have teams to win a conference at 7 to 1. Other books have them at 14 to 1. That's a large range, but some teams have ranges like that. So it all depends on the price, and obviously you want to bet the best prices. But yeah, I landed on Philly over Kansas City at 40 to 1. That was one of the better prices I could find, at least out here in Massachusetts.
Saw Philly over Cincinnati at 100. It's 100, the opposite result. Yeah. Yep.
How many bets
Cincinnati
you
over.
got? How many exactas you got right now? Don't lie to me.
I didn't plug them in. I was just looking up the numbers. I didn't plug them all in yet. Here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to take these 4 teams. I'm going to mix and match with Kansas City, Cincinnati, Philadelphia for sure. And I'm going to throw in Detroit, even though I don't love it. I'm going to want a second NFL team. But I find it interesting that our Super Bowl list is very short before week 1. Very short.
And the Niners, not on the list.
Get out. Get out Baltimore, the third favorite. Yeah. The Texas teams, Texans, Cowboys. See ya. See ya. I like it.
Bye.
And our opinions might change a little bit after week number 1 in the NFL.